Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is the last part of my Apples in a Hat series, and in this video we're going to add the grass and the flowers and put the final touches on everything. The app that I'm using is Corel Painter 2019 for Windows, and if you want to follow along traditionally, check out part 1 in this series where I have a list of all the paint, canvas, and the brushes that I use. So we want to start working on the grass now because we've got the hat and the apples pretty well done. So I wanted to go ahead and sort of fix the back edge of the hat here because it kind of smudged a little bit when I was working on it before. So I'm just adding a little bit of some green paint in the back, and this is how you would fix a painting if you're doing this traditionally too. Just kind of add a little bit of green paint in the back, and then you'll have to work on the hat brim again and sort of draw it in. And so that's what I'm doing here, and using kind of the same hat color. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit different because, as I mentioned before, there's variations of color in the straw hat anyway, so it's okay if you just kind of get a light yellow ochre color if you're following along with your acrylics, and just kind of work on the hat brim there and get it a little bit straightened and add a little bit of the green to the grass there and use the lighter color, sort of like the background. And then what we'll do is we'll take a small brush, and you can use your real thin bristle if you want to, and just go ahead and use it to make the little bit of the grass strands in the back here. And I was kind of trying to collapse the layers there, and then go ahead and add the grass strands behind the hat here. And if you're following along traditionally, you would use your script brush. And you'll take your acrylic paint and thin it down with water and make a real thin inky-like mixture, and then roll your brush in it till the tip of the brush comes to a point. And then you'll go ahead and use a circular motion, just like I'm doing here, and make the grass blades. And what I'm using here is the horsetail brush, which is a particle brush, but it gives a really good effect, kind of like a grass blade, so I really like to use it. And you use dark greens and light greens just to kind of show some shadow and some highlights on the grass there. And then you want to go ahead and kind of bring the grass up a little bit around the apples that are falling out of the hat there. And you can use a number 6 flat brush if you're following along traditionally, and just kind of match the grass color. It doesn't have to be exact because, again, there's going to be variations in the grass as well. And I'm just kind of using a dry brush stroke, the real long bristle, and widening it out just to make it look like a dry brush stroke here, and bringing some of the grass up around the brim of the hat too, because we don't want the hat to look like it's floating above the grass. We want it to look like it's fallen in the grass, and there's blades of it sticking up around the brim of the hat, and of course around the apples in the front too. So you can use phthalo yellow green mixed with hooker's green if you're following along with your acrylics, and throw in some white acrylic gesso, and that will give you kind of the color of the grass here. And just use a dry brush stroke, which is a stroke that on your paintbrush where you don't have very much paint, so it feathers out at the end, and that's kind of what we want, is this little feathery look for the grass. And then we will add the bigger blades of grass over the top of it. You don't want to cover up all your apples, but you do want to bring these blades of grass up and over onto your apples and over the hat, because that will give you the three-dimensional look and the depth, so that it looks like it's in a big patch of long, tall grass here. And if you're doing this with your digital painting, put the grass on a separate layer, so that if you have to go back and do something to the hat and the apples, then it's a lot easier. If you're doing this traditionally, you'll just have to probably cover up the grass again and add it again, but it can be done. But it is nice when you're doing digital painting that you can actually do this on a separate layer. So here I'm adding some darker strands in front of the hat, and you just want to kind of alternate with dark and light strands. As you can see in the photo reference, there's dark and light strands to the grass, and there's some in the corner of your painting, so you want to add a little bit to the right hand corner of your painting, the lower corner. Just make it a little bit darker, and that will sort of keep the viewer's eye focused on the center of your painting, which is going to be the apples in the hat. And then here I'm working on the stems of the flowers that are going to be in the upper left hand corner, and these are going to be right next to the hat. And my photo reference has tulips, but I didn't want to do tulips. I just wanted sort of a wildflower look. So I'm going with some yellow flowers here, and you can use your real long bristle brush if you're following along in Corel Painter, and just make strokes, rough strokes that look roughly like shapes of flowers. You don't have to put individual petals here. And we're using a yellow color. You can use cadmium yellow if you want to for your yellow color if you're following along with your acrylics. And then add a little bit of white acrylic gesso to put the highlight on the flower here. And you just want flower shapes. We're not working on big detail here because the flowers are not real close up. So just give them a rough shape and then put a dark dot in the middle for the center of the flowers. And you can use burnt umber for this if you're using your acrylics. And just kind of give it a rough shape. It doesn't have to be perfectly round or anything, and it won't be because you're looking at the flowers sort of from the side. So you want to go ahead and just kind of give it an uneven look so that it looks more like a natural flower. And then I'm bringing up some more stems across the flowers just to sort of settle those down and make it look like they're in a clump of grass here. And I'm adding some darker clumps of grass at the bottom of the flowers because there's shadow there, sort of caused by the hat and also caused by the clump of flowers. So put a little bit of dark green there. And you can use your hooker's green if you're following along traditionally. You can even might throw in a little bit of purple if you want to. But here I'm smudging it out just a little bit to make it look more like a shadow here. And I'm using the diffuse blur for that in Corel Painter. And then I just want to add a little bit more of the grass in front. And make sure that your brush is small. Again, you would use your script brush if you're following traditionally. And I'm using the horsetail brush or the real long bristle on a really small setting here. And then I'm just kind of playing around and trying to get the really small setting for this brush, the real long bristle. And this will be sort of the final little blades of grass that you put in, and they're smaller, so they'll look like it's the little bitty blades of grass that you can see in the photo reference. And so I'm just kind of adding those all around over the apple, again, apples in the grass, just to set those back, make it look three-dimensional. And then I wanted to add a few more flowers. So I wanted to add some blue flowers to this. And you can use ultramarine blue if you're following along with your acrylics. And again, we're making them the same way we made the yellow flowers. We're just making general shapes. We're not making big details. We just kind of want to show petals from the side view, sort of, and just kind of make it a shape of the flower instead of trying to draw in individual petals. And I'm just kind of putting those around. Don't put them in a even looking order. You want them to look random and like things are in nature. You don't want them all in a row. You don't want them to look like they're in a line. You kind of want to put them sort of in a zigzag type of pattern, and that will give you the random look that you need for a natural looking flower bed. And I'm putting in yellow centers here for these. And you just want to go ahead and take your number 3 round if you're following traditionally and just pop in a little center there. And you can make your flowers with the number 3 round. And then you can just use your real long bristle again for that, or the real flat. I'm not sure. It's real flat, I think. The real flat bristle. It's in the acrylics category. And just go ahead and use those for the flowers. And then I'm working a little bit more on the brim, just adjusting it a little bit more, trying to sort of smudge in the grass ends there, because we want it to look like it's going behind the hat, not just that the bristle, the grass blades have stopped at the brim of the hat. We don't want that. We want it to look like it's going behind the hat. So you want to make sure that you kind of smudge out the ends of your grass, even in the front, so that it looks like a whole blade of grass and not just lines that you've drawn there. So you kind of have to watch that. Make sure that it smudges into the grass color that you have. And I'm just kind of zooming out and looking at the picture and seeing what I need to do. And that's kind of like stepping back from the picture and deciding what else you want to do. And so here I'm signing it, but if you watch my videos, you know that doesn't mean that I'm through. Usually I sign it and then I look, step back and decide if there's something that I need to do, and just kind of try to see what final touches need to be on the painting. And I thought I might work on that apple just a little bit more. I just want to bring that highlight up just a little bit brighter, because it's one of the apples that's catching the sunlight there that is coming through the flowers. And I just kind of wanted to work on the flowers. I'm sort of smudging those out just a little bit better, adding a little bit of a darker color, a third color to the flowers, so that they can have a little bit more shadow to them. And then I decided that the purple flowers needed a little bit more shadow on them too. So I'm taking some dioxazine purple, if you're following along with your acrylics, and adding a little bit of some shadow color to the purple flowers, just to give them a little bit more depth. And it'll just look a little bit more three-dimensional when you step back from the painting. And then I'm adding a dark center, and I use dark purple for this too. And you just want to kind of give it a little bit more form. But again, we're not looking for great big details on these. We just want some impressions of some flowers in the grass. And then I wanted to work on that apple just a little bit more. Add the final highlight to it, make it a little bit brighter and a little bit more like the sun is really shining on it. So I'm just kind of smudging the highlight in on the edges, but leaving it pretty bright. And you probably would take your cadmium red light and mix it with white acrylic gesso. Still not a pure highlight, but here on the apples in the grass, I thought that I might add a little bit, almost close to pure white here, just to give those a little bit more highlight, because they're really catching the sun, if you see it in the photo reference there. So I just wanted to do that. And it was helpful that I had the grass on another layer in Corel Painter, so I was actually able to add the highlight easier. But you can just go ahead and work around the grass, maybe add it back if you're working traditionally. And I wanted to add a little bit more shadow to this apple here, make it kind of overlap just a little bit more, overlap the apples that are in the hat there. And I'm adding a little bit of a purple edge, not much, just a little bit to give it a little bit more of that shadow color. And this is what you do. You just hunt and pick and see what you think is good, and then if it looks good to you, then you can go ahead and just call it finished. So that's what I did. So this is the end of my Apples in a Hat series, and I'm going to be starting a brand new series soon, so hit the subscribe button if you want to see what I'm going to do next. And thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below. If you have any suggestions about what you would like to see next, just put those in the comments too. And I will catch you later.